single mother, working hard, doing everything alone, not because she had to, because that's what she decided strength looked like. I didn't have language for that as a kid. I just knew that asking for help wasn't something that happened in our house. What I experienced wasn't the absence of love, it was the absence of humanization. Nobody was naming what was being carried. There's no communication at all. Not by her, not for me. And a nervous system that wasn't able to distinguish between nobody is naming this because it isn't real, and nobody is naming this because nobody knows how. It just files the silence as data. Before one specific day that I still remember clearly, I was 7 years old, and after some playtime with my mom, she sat me down and said something that landed on me with a weight that I had no container for. I didn't have the development to hold it, but my nervous system received it as weight regardless. She told me, Anak, mommy lost her job. Anak means son in Tagalog, and I still clearly remember that memory. That weight had somewhere to go, into the prediction my brain was already quietly building around what the world felt like and what my place in it was. I didn't understand any of this at the time. I came across research years later, Lisa Feldman Barrett's work on how emotions are actually constructed. And it was the first time I had language for what that kid felt like, what that kid was doing, how he was trying to understand the world. His brain wasn't broken. He was doing exactly what brains do, building predictions from the data available, and the data available was not great. Not long after that, same period, probably the same month, I remember one specific day. It was an overcast day. It was probably between spring and summer. It was warm and gray, parked near these trees beside these condos, and something about that situation felt off. There was just something that just made me feel empty. I didn't have any words for it. I felt abandoned, but my nervous system was reading it. It was filling it, adding it to everything else that was already building. My mom didn't abandon me that day. She was just gone for a short while, but I felt abandoned. And now I understand why. Because what I was sitting with in that van wasn't just her absence, it was the weight of everything her nervous system was carrying, transmitted to mine without a single word. A 7-year-old had no framework for that. No language, no adult sitting with him saying what you're feeling right now is real, and it's not yours to carry. I just sat there, alone, confused, exposed. That's the word. I want to slow that word down because it's the most accurate one I have. I wasn't in danger. Nothing external was threatening me, but my body was reading something, and it filled all of it into one feeling that landed as there is nobody here. What I understand now that I wasn't responding to what was happening externally. I was responding to what her nervous system had been transmitting, the anxiety she was carrying, the weight of performing strength while everything was falling apart. I absorbed it without a single word being exchanged. It's not a metaphor. That's literally how nervous system co-regulation works in reverse. When the thermostat in the room is dysregulated, everything near it reads the temperature. I needed someone to attend to what I was feeling, to name it, to say it. What you're carrying right now is real, and it's not yours to carry alone. Nobody did that. Not because they didn't care, because nobody had ever done it for them either. I'll tell you what I know now looking back. That person that my mom was meeting, he was rude, he was brief. Every interaction with him and my mom was transactional. They always exchanged money. I hated him, and I felt it deep inside my soul. And so that prediction, the one that got built in the van in that period in a home where nobody named what they were carrying, kept running. My nervous system was doing exactly what it had been taught to do at 7, scanning, bracing, expecting the weight to arrive. I didn't have a name for it. I just thought that's just how I was built. What Barrett's research helped me understand was that what I was experiencing wasn't a character flaw. It was a very accurate prediction system doing exactly what prediction systems do. And the body doesn't timestamp, it just holds. And then, when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, that's when it surfaced. Not immediately, not cleanly, not obviously, but that piece of information changed the context enough that what had been filed at 7 years old finally had room to come up. And what came up wasn't just grief, about the diagnosis. It was the van. It was all those interactions, how he used to speak and why he would be calling. It was a weight that she'd placed on me in that same period and expected me to carry during that entire time. 20 years of a child who just needed someone to attend to what he was feeling, and an adult who had no idea that child was still in there waiting. I want to be careful here because this isn't about blame. My mother was doing what she'd been taught to survive. She grew up in her own version of a room, where nobody named what was being carried. She performed strength because somewhere along the way, she'd learned that not asking for help was the only version of strength available to her. She didn't hand me that weight on purpose. She handed me what she'd been handed, unprocessed without language, without anyone ever sitting with her in it either. What I felt in that period was grief for both of us. For the child I was, who needed humanization, emotional connection of some sort, and for the version of her that nobody had ever humanized either. She carried things alone her whole life, not because she was strong, because nobody had ever shown her that carrying it together was an option. I wish someone had humanized her, or at the very least, I wish she had humanized herself, given herself permission to say, "This is too heavy. I need help. I don't have to perform my way through this alone." Because if someone had done that for her, if she'd been able to do it for herself, the transmission would have been different. What I built in that van would have been different. Maybe I wouldn't even have been in that van to begin with, because that weight had been building since I was 7. It became unbearable. And then a few weeks after the diagnosis, it was like a pressure cooker that had been building for 20 years, finally found the crack it needed. At that time, I was already a mess. I was in a very dark place, doing some very dark things with some dark people. And outside of that, my brother still knew something was wrong that day. He was talking about how he had recurring dreams of me being shot in the head. That's why he came up to me that day. And he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "You know about Buddy? He was her pimp, wasn't he?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna fucking kill him." And I looked at the cabinet behind him because I had something in there that would have done the job. And I want you to understand what was happening in my body in that moment. This wasn't about anger about something that happened that day. This was 20 years. The van, the phone calls, the money, all of it surfacing at once. My nervous system had been filling that prediction since I was 7 years old, and it had just been handed the missing piece. And when I said those words, after that missing piece had been filled, my brother started to cry. This was the first time I've ever seen him cry as an adult. He's a stoic person who doesn't really express emotion. This was someone whose own nervous system had just registered what mine was about to do. And he said, "Please don't. I want my kids to have an uncle." That's it. That's the whole intervention. Not a script, not the right words said in the right order. One person, present, honest, not managing the situation, saying the one true thing that was available to him. He didn't argue with my rage. He didn't tell me I was wrong. He didn't try to regulate me by calming me down. He just stayed and told me what my presence meant to the people who needed me here. Something in me knew I was going to do this. But then those words made me feel appreciated for once by someone close in my family, because I've never heard something like that from anyone in my family. That's what co-regulation actually is. Not a calm voice talking someone down. One nervous system showing up fully present next to the other one at the worst possible moment, staying. My brother didn't fix the prediction. He interrupted it long enough for something else to become possible. That gap, that's where I am now. That's why his daughter has an uncle who loves her dearly, and she loves him dearly too. That's why I'm here talking to you. The thing I needed at 7, someone present, someone who stayed, someone who just made space for what I was carrying without needing me to perform my way through it, or at least not had gotten me to make the most fatal mistake I could have made at that time. My brother gave that to me at 27 when my mom was dying of cancer. And I want to tell you about my niece, because this is where it lands for me. Not in the theory, not in the framework. Here. My brother's words that day were the first time a close family member made me feel like I was worth something. Not because of what I could do, not because I was useful or convenient or performing well enough, just worth being here, worth having around, worth saving. I didn't know how much I had to hear until I heard it. 20 years of a nervous system that had been filling a very different prediction. And one sentence from my brother started rewriting it. That's why my niece and I are the way we are, because I actually truly enjoy listening to her laugh and filling her life with joy. Every moment of genuine presence. I know exactly what I'm doing even when she doesn't. I'm showing her what it feels like to have someone in your corner who isn't just there because they have to be, because she matters. I needed someone to do that for me at 7, and I didn't get it until I was about 27 for the first time. That little bit of it was already enough for me not to make that mistake. And I wanted to make sure that she wasn't going to wait that long. That's what this work is actually for. Not a better parenting technique, not a calmer reaction. The moment you realize what was missing and you decide consciously to make sure the child in front of you doesn't have to go 20 years to find it. I'm going to describe what I was feeling, and you can decide if any of it sounds familiar. All I needed was humanization, an emotional connection of some sort, to say that I mattered, not explained, just seen. And the one thing I've had to sit with, the thing that took the longest, is that she needed that exact same thing, someone to humanize her, to say you're carrying something too heavy for one person, and not asking for help isn't strength. It's the thing underneath strength that nobody ever attended to in you either. Nobody did that for her. That's why she couldn't do it for me. That's not an excuse, that's a transmission. And that transmission, that's exactly what this work is about interrupting. I want to say something to the parents of young boys, especially, because there is a message being handed to them, sometimes explicitly, sometimes just through what's never said, that what they feel is weakness, that emotion is soft, that the hard thing is to push through, shut it down, prove you're not affected, ignore it, push it away, resist it. Here's what that message actually produces. It doesn't produce boys who don't feel things. It produces boys who have no language for what they're feeling and no safe space to bring it. So the feeling doesn't disappear. It gets constructed into something else, something the culture around them has a word for: anger, loyalty, respect, revenge. Those aren't emotions that came from nowhere. They're predictions built from years of unfiled, unnamed, unattended sensations, looking for a container that doesn't make them look weak. The problem was never that these young men felt too much. The problem was that nobody ever showed them what to do with what they felt, so they showed the world instead. I was one of those young men, and I can tell you from the inside, the moments that defined the worst decisions of my life weren't moments of not caring. They were moments of caring so much with so little language for it, that the only thing available was action. That starts somewhere. It starts in a van. It starts in every moment a child reaches for emotional connection and finds performance instead. It starts when nobody humanizes that child, or the parent who couldn't humanize themselves. Teaching a boy to process his emotion isn't making him soft. It's giving him the one thing that keeps the feeling from becoming someone else's problem or his own fatal mistake. Your child is sitting in their version of that van right now. Maybe not literally, but there are moments when they're alone with something that they don't have language for, and they're reading your nervous system to decide whether there's room to bring it into you. What your body says in those moments, not your words, your body, is the thermostat in the room. The 3.5-minute presence reset in the bio is where I started. The link is down there.